Hey guys, it's Luton here. Welcome back for another round breakdown on Conquest Sabalan Pipeline. Sabalan Pipeline. So I'm going to be looking at Conquest and Rush, breaking down the map for you, taking a look around. And let's start off with getting to a helicopter again. Change up my control here. Okay, so to begin with, again, you get Viper, 2 aircraft, main battle tank, 3 bikes. You get, I believe, an LAV and a Humvee. So, oh, it's an ASRAD even. Okay, got an ASRAD. So you have a full complementary of vehicles, as you would expect. Let's take a look around. So we got an oil pipeline going on here. And as you can see, this base is really awesome. This map even. You got 5 main positions here, maybe different for PC on different scale maps. You got mountains over there towards D. And a hill over here on B, large hill. This gameplay again really good. The maps are about standard Conquest for console. The map is huge, and this obviously does not help with player counts. When you got 12 people aside, you can imagine how 12 people melt into this map very quickly. And what tends to happen is you end up having, sort of attacking combat of, 2 to 3 people, or in my case, if you're moving quickly, 1 person against 2 or 3. So the A base is the pumping station over here. Let's move across this way. Okay, we got the B warehouse here, huge warehouse complex, a lot of containers, cranes, and so on and so on. A lot of these supply down towards the supply depot, some big fuel dump tanks there. This hill over here can be quite good, a little hut in here, and this obviously gives you a kind of vantage point down to C, A, and across to B, so a lot of gameplay going there. Once B kept up, you get obviously tanks and stuff, so people often shooting down onto that. The C is obviously the refinery itself, I would imagine. Let's see what it's titled. When it lets me. Yeah, oil refinery. Okay, so C is the actual oil refinery itself. And again, this is quite a large base. A lot of it, superstructure rather. Fuel tanks and so on, all explodable. Got the oil burn off on the top here. I wonder if this actually burns your helicopter. Right, it doesn't burn your helicopter. Okay, so heading over to D over here. Again, we've got a pipeline extending out, a couple of roadways. And this base is the control station. Okay, heading down to E. This is the final one, the supply depot. Okay, there we go. Supply depot. The supply depot has 2 main roads going out of it, okay? Up here across, which split up. Obviously you can see the pipeline run through the middle, and that road splits out, 2 across to D, 1 goes to C, and you have another fork across leading up to B. So the roadways here, quite a few roadways moving, interlacing and crossing around the map. It's pretty good, as I say. The Conquest games that I had on it were pretty furious. You got the jets in the mix as well, but I can't help but feel that, as I've said before, on console this map is just too large. 12 people just disappear in this base. You constantly end up having situations where you're fighting just 2 or 3 people, or as I say, with my situation, if you try to cap a base solo, you end up facing, again, extra numbers because you end up 2-3 people on you. Your team are not there to help you. So personally, I'm not a big fan of these large maps on console Conquest. They just don't particularly work that well. That doesn't mean to say that you won't have enjoyable situations on these maps and that they wouldn't be fun to play. In fact, some people seem to prefer that to Rush for console, but me personally, I just find it a little bit frustrating because you just end up with these very sporadic situations of combat. But it can be exciting when you have multiple tanks trying to take one base at the same time and helicopters and everything getting in the mix as well. Okay, we're going to move over to Rush now and I'm going to give a breakdown of that one. Okay, starting off as an attacker, again you get your standard ASRAD, LAV, 3 bikes and a Viper. I'm not going to be taking the Viper this time. Okay, so we've got bikes, we've got an ASRAD and we've got an LAV. Let's take a bike up the road here. Okay, so the first base, basically... Actually, do you know what? Actually, it would be... it would actually be more useful to take the Viper just for this first one to give you a kind of overview of how this first base goes down. Because this first base is kind of interesting, which I want to show. Right, so the first base, you see basically what you have is this hill to climb, and you can flank out pretty wide around it. But the thing with this base, you can see as you come up the hill here towards A, we've got this container depot, and then B, a small position here on the right. But it's very, very open, and a lot of teams have been having a bit of difficulty with this specific first map. Okay, so now we're back at the pipeline. Now, an interesting point to make, and I haven't really seen, unbelievably, you would think, I haven't actually seen many people do this yet, which is that you can come up onto the pipeline here, and you can go all the way along it. Now, I expect as well that if we try, let's just try, I'm pretty sure you might be able to get a bike up there. Oh, he doesn't want to go. I think if we get a good enough sort of run up and do this right, it's doable. Ah, so close. Okay, right guys, I tried to get up here multiple times just to see how easy it was, and the thing is the bike really needs a hell of a run up to get up this little thing here, so you can't just drive up it, okay? When you get up here, it often lands on these side pieces here. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it took me multiple attempts. I nearly did it a couple of times, but it's way more trouble than it's worth. So you can't just drive up here with the bike, you just can't do it. However, you can use this gantry, as I say. You can run up here. Now you are a bit of a sitting duck. However, some teams may not notice this, and in some situations it could be safer. If there's a lot of combat going on to the right or to the left, this could actually be an option. Often the most insane routes can actually be the ones that work because they're so obvious. People don't think to look there to cover them. I found this many times in games that by taking the kind of insanely direct route, which you would think would have no ability to be useful whatsoever, end up actually being pretty good. You can imagine that you could even run a little further on here and drop like a recon beacon up on this position here. Unless you're a very observant defender, you may not notice it. So let's go down here. So this base here, you can see pumping station. We've got some pumping materials. Here is the MCOM in this fully enclosed building. Not much to speak of really. Again, you could get anywhere you want to cover this place. You know, guys coming in here. You could be ready for them. Defenders coming in. You're ready to take these guys down. Okay, let's get over now to the BMCOM and take a look at that. Again, very open area. Lots of frozen tundra, not a lot of cover, so moving up you really need to be careful, get in your cover and make sure it's safe before you move forward rather than covering across these open areas. B again, it's just by these kind of weird industrial units. A lot of places where you could hide again, getting down by these barrels here. Wonder if you could actually... Oh, it's a shame. It's a shame they didn't put these barrels aiming right at the M. You could have fired down them. That would have been cool. But again, very open. There will be a lot of defenders pouring in off of these rocks. Watch out for people up on top of these rocks here again. Because people can obviously lie down prone in here, fire down. This left-hand road is always one. LAVs coming up. You want to put the rockets down on that road there to stop those vehicles coming down. Okay, now we move up onto the refinery. Okay, so from the second base you see we get 3 bikes and an LAV, I believe. So let's go pick that up. LAV is over here on this road away from the pumping station. Right, off we go. And again, you can see we've got a main road going up here, alright. But an interesting thing, we've got a couple of different routes into the base, and I'm going to go over here to the left-hand side first to show you what I was saying earlier, that flanking in these maps is just so wide and open. And you can see, look, you can go right up here. So we can flank so far outside the base. I mean, as a defender, how are you meant to counter against this? And it shows that the way these maps are tailored, look, you can go right out here, you can go all the way over to these buildings. So you really, you can go right out behind, look. The area that you have to defend on rush on these large maps is massive. And look, we can come right up behind these bases here, so we can go all the way around. And if we go down and show the other side, here's the base itself. Now we're going across to this other left side, from my perspective right now, I mean. And again, look, you can take this road right up around. You can come all the way over here, right up to this other base. So you see how far you can flank around the bases. It's massive. This base, holding this base, I mean, it's a huge refinery as it is. Trying to control the amount of people that you'll have pouring into this base, just 12 guys, it's going to be very hard. Like, how can you spot that amount of people? So as defenders, trying to spread out in this base is not really an option. What you need to do is set up a tight but spread out defense. When I say tight and spread out, what I mean is kind of well distributed around the base. You're going to have LAVs coming in probably on these main roads, and you're going to want to kind of estimate where it's going to be most prudent to place your sort of, you know, AA mines. Around these kind of gate areas is going to be difficult, but again, when you're placing on snow mines, don't have mines today, but when you're placing your mines, it's going to be very difficult because they're going to be so visible. Coming into the base itself, it's got a lot of superstructure which I could get up into, but there's a lot of places you can climb, get up to ladders, walkways, but the A position is very easy. It's straight here, look, it's just right out in the open. But the thing to think of when you're arming these is where people may be. Although we're out in the open here, you see you can get a line of sight almost straight along this thing, and again, there's a lot of places that defenders could position themselves. From here, for example, you could very nicely set up a bipod LMG, and that would give you a very strong line of sight down on there. The other thing to be wary of is, again, people in this kind of superstructure here, or defenders, you may want to use this superstructure. And up we go. So again, from these buildings, of course, you're going to have a very good vantage point. As defenders, what I say about being well spread out, you may want to have people over here to cover this kind of left-hand side of the hill. You may also want people amongst the B area, but really, it just depends on how the enemy team are playing. You're not going to really know until you get in game. Are they being very direct? Are they flanking a lot? And you just have to kind of compensate and adjust for that. Right, let's get these MCOMs armed. The BMCOM is actually up on the first floor, so there's a couple of ways you can get there. You can go through this staircase right here, which brings you up above it, okay? Which is, you know, good. Again, recon point down here if you want or whatever. There's another stairwell here, which comes from the ground floor. But again, there's multiple ways that you can get into these buildings, and there's never going to be just one way. I mean, if you're having trouble getting into it directly, of course, there's always going to be a walkway coming across. There's also going to be the main walkway coming off the pipeline as well. So you can get up from this way. So you really can see, so if you came into the base further down, and you decided to get up of this, or even, of course, the pipeline itself still accessible. You can still get up here. You can get up onto these positions here. You know, so there really are, you can get up onto the pipes. There are like many options of how you get into these bases, and I think it kind of highlights what I was saying in my livecom video last night. for console, there's just so many options on these maps. It really feels like Armored Kill all over again. The scale of the maps is fantastic. It's awesome that you have all these choices. It's awesome that they've designed the maps so intricately and that there's so much design gone into them. However, unfortunately, when it comes down to gameplay, for 12 people aside, it's just hard. It's really too difficult. This base is very, very hard to hold, simply because of the fact that, you know, the scale of the map and how wide it is. The AMCOM, in my experience, generally goes down pretty fast. The B one, because it's inside this building, a little bit more difficult. Depends on how the team are playing out. But again, you get people surrounding on the mountains, on the ground, coming in, blah, blah, blah. It really just is a toss-up. It just depends how focused your teams are, depending on how the round goes down, and you know, that's what it really is. But the base itself, I think what I would say is the base itself just does not lend itself to assisting you. You know, the geography of it doesn't. It's not in your favour. Okay, then we have a very short distance, just straight run across this road here. Not too much to talk about. There's a hut up there. We got the pipeline moving on down on the right hand side. You can still flank fairly wide, but notice that the boundary is very tight here, so we don't have that far to move up. Let's go on into this base. You've got your default concrete buildings, your default concrete shed, and the AMCOM is located at the base of the crane. And there we go, simple as that. This should be... The interesting thing is that this base is very close to the refinery, and you would think that it would be very easy to just push across and hold this line. But with a couple of vehicles and some strong, you know, defence, this tends to be the base that actually gets held. I don't know why that is, but it just does seem to be the case. I think it's possibly because the defenders themselves spawn quite close to this base, and as a result it means that the attackers have to constantly deal with this quite strong, quite concentrated force. I think the larger maps, people tend to get a bit bored, they go wandering off, they go around, and that's when, you know, the base gets infiltrated because it's much larger. This kind of smaller, tighter base means that it's much more difficult to overcome. Okay, so now we're going on down to the last base. This is going to be the supply depot. And again, from looking at what we did on Conquest, you'll know now there are a couple of roadways going down here. Again, we go from that very, very short distance from the refinery to an extremely long distance. Look how far you have to go to get down to this last base. It's a huge distance. It's a huge distance. Much, much further than the refinery. I mean, it's taken us a good, like, I don't know, what, 20... We're driving for quite a long time here. No, we're not even back at the refinery yet. So we're talking a good sort of 20 seconds, maybe even half a minute, just to travel the distance. So look at the distance between this base, the third base, and the refinery. Okay, really short. A really, really short distance. You know, I mean, look at that. You could walk that in about 5 seconds. It's a very, very close base. But this one seems, like I say, seems to get held quite often. But then you go from that to this epic slog down the hill here. I mean, so as an attacker, if you thought that third base was difficult, look at the distance you've got to cover in order to get down onto this one. Just showing again there, like how the dirt bikes are really, look at that. You see how these dirt bikes are so fast, so manoeuvrable? You can just fly across the terrain. And I think that's going to be the key to this last base as an attacker. Speed. You need to get down here fast before they can set up any kind of defence. You need to get these bikes, get these tanks, just thrash them down here. Defenders, you're going to have to take these vehicles out. You're going to have to take them out very, very well. Otherwise, you're going to be overwhelmed before you know what's happening. Don't forget, you'll probably have a helicopter to contend with as well if they've got anything about them. Personally, I would perhaps use the pipeline a little bit here. You are going to be a bit of an obvious target, but it would give you a little bit of height to get on and spot some of these targets. But again, you're going to want to watch out for snipers, because snipers are going to love this kind of base. They've got the height advantage, they've got the distance advantage, and they're going to be able to fire down into this base. This base, again, It's not massive, so that does go in the defender's favour. On the downside, it's a very huge open area that they have to cover. You've got 2 main road entry points, you've got a flank, you've got another flank over here. It's going to be very easy for bikes, vehicles and everything to kind of flank around and attack you, do a pincer movement. You know, you have probably the main tanks coming down the road here, you have infantry flanking down here, and you may have, as I say, air vehicles in the mix as well, pounding the base. So when you get to this base, it's going to be really difficult. If possible, I reckon this map, the first and third bases are the key ones for rush on console if you want to defend it. PCs can play out a little bit differently because of the numbers. Okay, that's been Sabalan Pipeline. I can never remember this name, damn it. Sabalan Pipeline. I hope you've enjoyed, guys. Got the other maps coming up today as well. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please drop it a like, leave your comments below, and I read them all as always. See you next time for some more Battlefield.